to their own feelings, even if they're wrong. And he's just this courteous Southern gentleman who's more than just, I'm sorry, that's not fair. Uh, he's he firmly believes in family, that we know that. Um, but we get to know him quite well. And, you really should only judge people by their actions, unless it's their speech, like Tucker Carlson or some ex-president. You can judge them by their speech because it's rotten. But his actions were totally honorable in this. And Tommy and Jamie Foxx, oh my God, who knew this guy could act so well and have this transformative character go through such changes? So, and the script was just terrific. The words that were given to say, the structure of the film, I was so impressed with it. Welcome, Betty. Good to have you aboard. Is your friend Linda with us? Not yet.
Yes.
Oh, that
Yeah.
Linda.
It's
Okay.
this Linda.
I thought so. Linda, you're out of town too, right?
Yes.
Okay. But you've been aboard before, right?
Yes. I came to one of the classes
I
before.
see.
Yeah,
Okay.
the maestro. I joined her.
Oh yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's get down to the movie. And came out of nowhere. It's an Amazon film. It was in theaters for about a week. Didn't get any publicity. Nope, I didn't know about it until it was on Amazon. And it's a very forbidding title, isn't it? You look up The Burial, and there are four films called Burial or The Burial. And it will certainly drive people away from the box office. No one wants to pay to see a funeral. And that's what it sounds like, but of course it's anything but. But I want to call attention to why this worked on us. So let me poll the audience to make sure I'm not wrong here. So who wants to tell me what they thought of the film briefly without parsing it? Did you like it? Did you think it was too much? Was it believable? What did you like about it? Doris, you're first up. You're muted too. You're muted, Doris. Lower left corner of your screen.
Sorry, I didn't know. Yeah, I liked the film a lot, Jim. I thought it was clever. I didn't know very much about Jamie Foxx. I didn't know he was an actor. But he certainly did a good job in that film, I would say.
Yeah.
It was you had to kind of roll with it a lot because the characters kept on changing.
Gee, imagine that. Like life, huh?
Yeah, they kept on, he kept on changing.
Right. He grew.
He became a very nice person after all.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because that's a real important part of the film is his character arc.
His character just, yeah.
Yeah,
He was a selfish guy who only wanted the money, and little by little he became a mensch, and it was and he cared about this guy very much. He really did care about him.
Right. Okay, Linda, you have your hand raised.
Yes. I also watched this movie a few months ago when it came out. And then I watched it again over the last couple of days. I thought it was very, very well acted. I thought the two male actors were very dynamic, and they both were very, very credible and very, very engaging in the story. And when I first saw it, I looked upon it as a story against corporate greed and how the small businessman rallies. But when I saw it the second time, I was more tuned into some of the racial overtones. And I thought that was done very subtly, but it kind of had more of a bite for me the second time around. The comments that were being made about the young Black lawyer being referred to as, he kept calling him son. One of the other lawyer called him son a lot and was demeaning to him. And then he would come in to be introduced, and they would be surprised. Oh, you mean you're the lawyer? So some of those subtleties I didn't pick up as much the first time around, but the second time I did. So I think it had a lot of different levels, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it even more the second time.
Yeah, I did too. Race became a big part of the trial, in and out of the spotlight, and the Jamie Foxx side of it tried to bring race in a lot. The other side tried to avoid it. And there's that very funny scene we'll get to very soon when they see the opposition come in the hotel. Miriam, what do you think of it? You have to unmute to tell us. Lower left corner, click on the microphone.
It's frozen.
There you go.
I like the movie very much. I have already recommended it to a few people. I don't know if it's very new and coming out, or if it's come out already, or is it an older movie?
No, it came out last year on Amazon Prime. I believe it's an Amazon Studios financed film.
And
Played in theaters, and
it's
it's
interesting what you said about the term burial, which is maybe a bit of a turnoff, but it wasn't for me because I had no idea what burial meant or how they were treating the word. And of course, it was all about that. It was about people paying for graves,
Yeah.
and it was about our society, and it was about corporations, and it was about the Black problem. And it did touch on many different issues. Each one can be discussed separately, but it showed the development, as someone else said also. Jamie Foxx started out as being a man totally and solely and only and exclusively interested in making money. He didn't care anything else about the law except that he should win every single day.
Right.
And then it shows him when he said, I screwed up.
Right, that humbling moment. Okay, we'll get to that.
And he could, yes, he could have gotten drunk. He could have done this, he
Right.
could have done that, but he did not.
Okay, we'll get to that moment. Thank you. Joel Jaspin and friend.
Elaine, go ahead.
Hi, I watched it twice, and it is certainly a feel-good movie because everything turns out well. But the one flaw that I saw in it from the beginning was this man has 13 children who he is dedicated to, and he wants to have this business for them to carry on, but we never see not one of them. Not one of them appears in the movie. I thought that was sort of questionable in my mind.
Okay.
And also some of the scenes in the courtroom were highly unlikely to have occurred.
You're referring to the arguments in court?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that doesn't happen much in American courts, but it does in Europe. But it was a movie, so they got to play by their own rules.
Right.
Anne, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I was really glad that you put this movie out there because otherwise I would not have seen it. And I think
Excuse me, Miriam, can you please mute yourself? Because I think that's coming from you. Thank you.
McConnell finds himself in what could be his final battle against Trump and his
Okay, we don't want to hear about that. Okay, thank you. Anne, go ahead. Go ahead, Anne.
thank you for selecting this movie. I was really glad because I wouldn't have known about it. I thought I actually didn't think that these two men were so different. I thought that they were different about money, but they weren't different about family. And I think that was the beautiful fusion that evolved in the movie, that they started to recognize that about one another and started to really appreciate that was something that bound them together. But themes that stuck out for me, one of them was sort of this whole notion about justice and whether it's blind or not. I think somebody made a statement in the movie.
Yeah, right, that's at the end.
And then also the whole thing for me about, and when I said earlier that it felt like a very today movie, had to do with this whole notion of people who are disadvantaged, whatever race or place that they come from, how they get nailed over and over and over again. And I thought that was so poignant and so timely.
It is. Okay, let's move on. Does anybody have any comments they want to share about their reaction to it? Kimberly, you knew I was going to call on you.
It feels good. Feels good.
I knew it was coming, and when I
That's
started
great.
tapping that pen, I just broke out. It's satisfying moments like that that really imprint a film on your mind. It's like they've reached you because they're rooting with them, for them, with them.
Yeah.
It shows a lot of empathy, just that little bit, Okay, good. Stella, do you want to share your thoughts on it?
I think I misunderstood. I thought we were gonna be watching the movie.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. This is my
Okay.
first meeting, but next time I will come prepared. But it sounds like a great movie from everything that I've
It
heard.
really is. You should watch it.
I
And
will.
you'll just, if you listen tonight, you'll just pick up all our bad habits. So
Hmm.
I'd rather you come with your own bad habits. The next film is on March 6th. That's also a Wednesday. Yeah, yes. So 2 Wednesdays next month. And I don't know what the film will be yet, but I'll make sure you learn about it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So let's move on and break down the movie, and I'm going to explain why you all liked it so much. It has a great opening, right? We've seen Black Sermons before in other movies, and it's a great introduction to who he is. You'll notice there's a cut while he's giving his sermon to his wrist on the podium, and he's got diamond rings and a diamond watch, and it's very subtle. But this guy's a skillful orator, we know, and we don't know who he is, but he really knows how to rouse the church.
Jim, why?
Yes,
But when was he a minister?
he wasn't. His brother invited him to speak at his brother's church.
Oh, I thought it was his church.
No, no. Okay, could you mute yourself now, Miriam? So
Yes, I will, exactly. Yes.
thank you. So now that's great. And then the next shot after that is Home and Family, and that's in O'Keefe's home. And you know, that's the sole reference that the family gets. You see them all together, you see a picture of them. I don't know. I just felt that family was important to him because he's fighting for his legacy, and that's enough. And you know, there are the old advertisements for the funeral home, and Tommy Lee Jones is so convincing. I felt his sincerity saying, this has been in my family for 100 years, and I'm not going to let it go. This is what I built. This is what makes my life meaningful, is leaving this to my kids. I'm 75 years old. And the funny line, of course, there's lots of humor in this. You know, he says to his wife, and there's not one felon among them, all 25 of the offspring. And the wife is just, she was so natural throughout. I don't know who it was as a performer, but from the very first scene she's in, she says to him, what's wrong with you? I can't comment on that, can't I? Are you okay? He gets a little choked up because he's admiring his offspring. And it was not theatrical at all. It's how a 50-year-long marriage people would talk to each other. And they don't have to do much, but her delivery was kind of sarcastic. I still can do that, can I? You know, and he puts his arm around her. Just touching little stuff, very well directed, with a light director's touch and a light actor's touch. And then we go to the trial in Florida. And he gives this great sermon about how this awful guy was drunk, but he had a green light. So it was the trucker's fault. And in a way, it's how he persuades an audience. He says, sure, this guy was a no good. You know, he was a drunk. He was suicidal. He was depressed. He's all that. So he plays into the other side's playbook and says, yeah, they're right, but that's not important. Why? And he saves it for the climax because the light was with him, not with the semi-truck that hit him. And that's how orators work. They manipulate the audience, just like he manipulated the audience in the church built them up into a frenzy. And, you know, it's like a stand-up comedian or a singer will do, or a performer on stage, or a rabbi, but not so often. They they read the audience, and they know how to make subtle changes in their delivery and in what they say to pull the audience along with them. And it's like a movie. When they're making this movie, they said, well, what does the audience need to know next? What will draw them in? What will make them feel like these are guys they want to spend 2 hours with? Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but there's a shot of Tommy Lee Jones in the gallery of that trial. That's the second scene in the movie, and people are rising in applause. So they love that verdict, you know, $75 million, whatever it was, against that man in the wheelchair. what was he doing there? You know, he goes from his family, birthday party to, what's that all about? And I want to equate this, and I just did. The trial is like the church sermon, isn't it? He's manipulating the audience. It's to the point where he has them where he wants them. But why is Jerry O'Keefe there? All we know him is as a family man. And then they meet in the office, and we get introduced to Hal, the young black lawyer, probably never had a case in his life. And where did he come from? And that's a great meeting because the arrogance of Willie is on display there by him and his first lieutenant. Look at this is mahogany with all the gold trim, and your case is not a Willie Gary case because it's too cheap. We don't work for $6 million, much more than that. And you're white. So talk about race, it starts coming from the other side. And there's nothing bad with being white. He says, it feels unnatural to me. It's like, it could have come out the other way with a white lawyer saying, I don't represent black people. But so it's what the right would say, overly woke, an extreme reaction, the far right, lest I offend anybody. So we know that he needs an attorney. And then we set the conflict up. Back at home, two insurance investigators say, you owe money, you don't have enough cash reserves to have your insurance business, you're in trouble. Okay, so that's the conflict. That's the Jerry's weak spot. So that's necessary. And that's the fifth scene in the movie. And then we begin to understand who the culprit is. That scene where Mike asks the waiter for another bourbon, son, please. And at the airport, he calls Hal son. These are signifiers that this guy is a Southern bigot. He doesn't even know that he's offending these people. And that's what they mean by he's got white privilege all over his face. That when the black team said, you know what I mean about him, and they nail him later. Mike has counseled him in the country club scene where he orders the bourbon from his non-son. You should settle this, sell off 3 of them. You have enough money to continue on. And we begin to feel that Jerry doesn't want to do that.
No.
But he goes to the yacht anyway, and gets introduced to this concept. It's laughable, the golden era of death. I mean, this could have been a Saturday Night Live skit, except it was played for real. You could have had some caricature of a greedy funeral home salesman or a businessman. And after he says golden era of death, the camera goes around the table and gets everybody's reactions to it. It's very funny. It's how these reaction shots that are often used aren't because they have something to say, but it's because their expression tells you how they feel. So immediately we're being led into the more personal opinions of the characters, especially Hal. And 4 months later, the contract hasn't been signed. Right. And he says, I just might sue them. And the wife says, I know you have to do the right thing because I know you. And then Hal walks into the office and he plays the Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous spoof, which is very funny in itself. They nailed
That was funny. That was funny.
And they got the guy's voice. What's his name? Robin French or something. They got they probably got him to do it for a couple of bucks. And that's the reality that they created around these characters. Hey, Joel, Mitch is joining. What do you know? Hello, Mitch. Glad to have you aboard. So Hal obviously has said, let's go meet this guy. and we should meet him because it's a black county and a black jury is likely and a black judge. And that's one of those scenes where Jerry says, but this isn't about race. It's about business. He screwed me or tried to screw me. And that comes up a lot, that concept. And then we flash forward to the conference in his office. So wait a second, why was Jerry at the trial in the beginning of the film and he's just meeting him now for the first time? Well, this is a sleight of hand. The audience, aren't supposed to realize that Willie Gary is wearing the same shirt and gold cufflinks, and it's the same office. And, what did they do? They fractured time. They moved that scene, half of that scene, up to the beginning of the film. Why did they do that? Anybody have an idea? Want to chime in on that? Okay, I'll ruin it for you. It's because they have to introduce both characters early. And, you get a big dose of Willie Gary in the sermon, and you get a decent dose of Jerry and his wife at home in the family scene. And then we're in the trial where Willie Gary's performing, at his 105% best, high drama. And it's just like the church where he asks a question twice to elicit a stronger response, like the hallelujahs and others. And he does that in the big trial later on as well. So you begin to get a sense that this is who the guy is. Yeah, and then we see that scene in his office play out. And it's very funny. He says to Jerry, sorry, I just don't, no offense, but I just don't do this kind of case. And Jerry says, no offense taken. And he walks away saying, he's not for us. He's too big. Jerry didn't approve of him anyway. But that's why he's not insulted by and why he says no offense taken. That's the kind of guy Jerry is. So it's like a double-edged sword. He's cunning, and that he knows this guy's too slick to represent me. And so that's why I'm not going to take any offense. He can say whatever he wants because I'm done with him. So he's a big enough, mature enough guy to walk away. And a lot of people would take the bait, and be offended and pick a fight, despite the mahogany desk. And then Hal runs back to Willie Gary's office, and it's a very funny scene. All the talk of being an airline pilot and a war hero and fighting the Ku Klux Klan and denying them a permit to march in Biloxi doesn't faze Willie Gary at all. And then we learn that Hal was smart enough to see the key to Willie Gary's personality. You remember what it was? He says, this will put you in the big leagues. Who knows? Because the corporation we're suing is huge. And you'll get far more press out of this one than you will out of your ambulance chasing. And that catches his attention. And then Hal goes on to compare who Willie Gary might become, starting with Thurgood Marshall and a couple of white guys thrown in there, great, lawyers and judges. And then he ends it with the final one is Johnny Cochran.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's like Johnny Cochran was a lawyer, the lead lawyer in the OJ case, along with a woman whom he had an affair with. And that came out, a couple of years ago. And that was a hoot. They even made a television movie about that relationship. How could she have a relationship with an attorney that she's working with? Well, look at Fonnie in
Willis,
Florida,
yeah.
who's having an affair with a guy she hired. It's like, you can say, what does one thing have to do with another? But, the Trump people would certainly jump on that to showing how she's morally unfit to participate in the trial about his morality. So, it's very funny stuff. And this movie was made in the Trump era, about 1990 to 1995, that era. So they get to be prescient about what was coming up. So anybody have any questions so far? You're letting me do all the talking, but I find this movie to be really well structured. It feeds us the information. It goes punch, counter punch. It goes contradiction, resolution. People react to each other all the time. It's like, it's not subtle, but it's satisfying, slimy, but satisfying, as they say in the movie. That was from Lion King. So he signs on, and then they go to tell Mike that. And Mike Allred is the good old boy attorney that he's known for 30 years. And here's another character. He gets upset. Mike gets upset with Jerry, and Jerry says, "I knew you might be pissed off about this." It's like he gets it. He knows the consequences of what he's doing, but he's excusing himself for doing it because he's thought this through, and it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's Jerry's character there. And then we have the great scene where the entourage, all the black lawyers, follow Willie Gary into Mike's office.
So
Hilarious, their entrance down the hallway with the music. These are really satisfying moments. It's like it's telegraphing to us, yes, we're in on the joke, but it's a good joke because we know the confrontation that's going to come, because we've seen Mike refer to black people as son twice. So we know that's going to be a confrontation. And then they have an argument where he gets Mike to agree to let Willie Gary be the lead lawyer. And then they start the war game. Let the war games begin. And when he delivers the news to his wife, she says, "It's not like you to do this. And you're 75 years old. Men your age don't start suing people." And he says, "Well, I got my reasons." And his reason is, "I don't want to see him get away with what he did to me." So it's a moral fight, isn't it? I would never do this to anybody, and I'm really pissed off that it was done to me. So he immediately establishes his credentials. He doesn't want the money. He's risking everything. And I believe he says to her, "And by the way, I'm paying for this because I put a third mortgage on our house." And later he cancels the cable because he can't afford the cable fees. Life intrudes. I can't let him walk all over us, Jerry says. And it's like, here's a decent man who would never treat anybody the way Lowen is treating him.
no.
So it's very satisfying to just hear him plainly, simply, without anger, saying, "No, I can't let this happen to us. I'm thinking of all of you. This is not, I have to leave a legacy for my family that means something. I'm fighting for all of us." And then there's a lovely scene on the plane where they're sitting, across from each other. And Willie Gary's eating his fruits and nuts for his snack, and tells the story of how did he get here? How did he become a lawyer? And he was turned away because he was black, and he vowed to never let that happen again. And then he serves the apartment renter guy with papers for 5 counts of race discrimination. And they agree, "You're a fighter, aren't you?" Jerry says, "You're a fighter." And he says, "You are too." So whoever said it, they're really very much alike. But Jamie Foxx is the flamboyant fighter. He relishes a good spat, right? And he's always won. Of course, he picks the arena that he fights in. And that point is made. You're just an ambulance chaser. You never survive in New York City. But this might put you on the map. And Jerry's the quiet kind of fighter who does the right thing because it needs to be done. Very Jewish guy. And but it could be anybody. I'm not saying it's a Jewish trait. It's just, justice shall you pursue. So he goes to law school, and they're both fighters. "And why are you fighting, Jerry?" And he said, "It's because of my legacy." Again, it comes up. "I want to leave something for my family." And we don't see the family members saying, "Oh, great, he's going to fight for us," or "I wish he'd not fight and just settle and leave us a couple $100,000 each." No, we don't need that. The point is, this is this guy's struggle, and his family has nothing to do with it in terms of their contribution to the decision making. But they have everything, he's doing this for them because he believes it's the right thing to do. And that's where the Feels Good song, Jamie Lee Foxx is celebrating their bonding over being fighters together. And he says, "Put on some music," and his henchman goes and puts on the Feels Good song. And then they check into the hotel. I hope you guys, I love to do this because I'm breaking down the film into the scenes and the parts that move us. If you have another take on it, or you have a special reaction to something, please chime in. And that check-in scene is great. That's where they see the other legal team assembled, all Black players, and Hal is astonished at the legacy, not legacy, the array of talent, high hitting, the biggest Black lawyers in the country are there on the other team. And what does Willie Gary say? Yeah, they look like a bunch of stooges and dunces to me, they're all kept people, none of them are their own person. Which is a typical stance he'd take, even if it's not true, because we later learn that Mame is a fighter and she is her own person. But the point is, this is how he defends himself and his own feelings. He retaliates with a very defensive comment, even if it's wrong, it suffices, so he's not entirely, it's part of his ego talking, and that's what protects him going forward and makes him such a tough adversary. Like somebody we know who's on the news every day. The best defense is a good offense, right? Accuse them of something bad you're doing or have done. Deflect the attention away from you and let it disparage someone else. And then he surprises us. He sends a bottle of the best champagne to that table, and Hal says, please don't do it. Hal's never been in trial himself. And Jerry says, well, I'm just putting on, it's like I'm going to a fight with a bear and I'm putting honey on myself. It's bait. Again, it's like this guy he's honed his craft such as he has chosen it. And, it's cute stuff like that. So let me catch up with my notes here. Oh, and then he has the audacity to confront Mame in the bar at the hotel. And she's, courteous and tough. And, she says, is this a date? And he says, well, no, not really. I guess it's not a date. Or maybe it is, and at the end of it, she pulls a very Willie Gary stunt, doesn't she? What does she do at the end of that scene? She gets up and goes over to him and leans into his ear and says, nigga, I will destroy you. I mean, can't you see Willie Gary doing that? He just didn't think of it. Of course, he was trying to be Mr. Cool and he's respectful to a woman, even his opponent, but she turns the tables. She doesn't have to be respectful to him. She lets him know she's a very sizable adversary. Steve Zimmerman, famous trial lawyer, Steve Zimmerman.
Yeah, right. I mean, I enjoyed the movie mainly because of the acting. And I hope the Wi-Fi is okay. I'm having problems with the Wi-Fi
we hear you
in my house, so I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I might go in and out. I love the acting. I thought the script writers kind of savaged how it is in a real courtroom. I can't believe, I know it's based on a real case, but my God, they certainly turned it into, a real moral play. I mean, the diatribes going on in there were just insane. I can't believe that's how it really was. I'd love to see the transcript. It's a good thing. I will say it's a good thing Jeremiah won the case, because there's a tension in the movie that was kind of buried, which was how reckless it was to proceed under those circumstances, including turning down this fantastically huge settlement offer when he's on the edge of oblivion with his house, everything that he had, a triple mortgage on his house, being taken care of, and so forth. And in that regard,
you're going in and out, Steve.
There was kind of like male egos. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
I may have frozen. It's male egos out of control to some extent in this movie. And it worked out okay. How fortunate. In real life, there must have been more going on in that trial to justify the decisions that were made. I mean, as a lawyer, it was just insane what was going on.
Well, it was 30 years ago.
Depositions beforehand. You would know what everybody was going to say.
Right. They would have been better.
You'd have motions in limine limiting the testimony, and that was all thrown
Okay.
out the window,
Steve, let me
Yeah, I
interrupt
mean, you
you.
got to accept it, I guess, the way they present it, but
You know what I say, and I've said this before, don't let the facts get in the way of a good movie. Yes, that's not the way it would happen,
yeah,
although
right.
it was
I mean,
30
it's
years
it's
ago.
allegorical.
It was not a very sophisticated community. I'm not saying the judge was a hick or anything, but it's like, it's, I don't know, I can't defend the script because it worked, and it's all make-believe. So in a fantastical legal world where that would be permitted and nobody would get found in contempt, it worked for the movie. Betty, you're muted, Betty. Unmute. Betty, you're muted.
Okay, yeah. I really love the movie too. But like Steve, afterwards and I'm like this anyway with any book or that I read or movie that I see, I'm usually very, if it's based on a true story, I'm usually very curious to know what's true and what's not true. So I did read up a little bit about it, and but I thought so I know they did change some things for dramatic effect, but I love the movie. And I wanted to say, Jim, by the way, that you have found so many movies that I'd never heard of, that I probably would never see if you didn't suggest them, that are really good. So I did want to just put that in there, that I appreciate that. But one thing they did say, when I was reading about, there was an article on what was true and what wasn't, and one thing they said is the two of them did remain friends for life, that they were lifetime friends. The lawyer and
that was in the end titles, if end credits, if you watched it, there's a
oh,
still picture of them later on. Or it may have been at the time of the trial, because there was a Lowen poster in the background. Unless they were celebrating it was a party to celebrate the victory. Well, Betty, please write an email to my wife to tell her that all the hours I spend looking at bad films pays off occasionally.
oh.
I don't schedule films for us where there's nothing to talk about. It's like, what's the point? I'll give you an example. Another feel-good movie that's out now called Boys in the Boat, directed by George Clooney. Lovely, slick movie set in the 30s, where the freshman team at the University of Washington State goes to the Olympics, the crew team, rowing, and wins, and this was the Olympics where Jesse Owens won his medal, humiliating Hitler. And it's another film, it was based on a book, and everybody who's read the book said the book was much better, because they had to defeat the upper class team at Washington State, and they were all rich kids, and they had to play against Princeton and preppier schools where there was money. But this freshman team pulled together. It's a lovely film, and the tensions are high. Like this one, it ends in a big climax, right? What everything's been building up to. But you know what? It wasn't about class warfare or class struggle. It wasn't even that much about, let's show those Nazis, what we're made of. It was just about, it featured one guy in a romance, but it was tepid. Yet it's a fun movie. You can watch it and say, oh, I was amused, I was rooting for them, but it leaves you dry. You don't think about it much the next day, unless you think about these things. And this film also was hold on, Betty. It was a feel-good movie where you had a feeling where it was going, and when it went there, you were satisfied, but you felt you were on a journey with these people, because both characters had an arc. They went through changes, and you were there every step along the way with them. Okay, the Kowalskis have something to say, and Betty, then back to you. Unmute, Joe.
Okay. Linda and I agree on this, that this was like every love story that's ever been made. Man finds girl, boy finds girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back.
Right.
Man finds lawyer, man loses lawyer, man gets lawyer back.
Back.
And it's all about the money. It's all about the money. He says he doesn't he doesn't care. He just wants to leave the kids something. He's got enough kids to let them worry about themselves. He should have taken the money from the arbitration that they went to. Didn't take that. He wanted the money. Anybody who's been in business like he's been in business, has been dealt with unfairly by suppliers, by people that they work with. So for him to be unfairly treated by this big corporation, he should be used to that. Just walk away,
But he's from Mississippi.
You have to consider the context.
Mississippi.
This is Hicktown City,
Right, backwards.
and it's almost as awful a state as Alabama.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Jim, we were probably one of the only ones that saw it in the movies when it came out. But then we rewatched it again this week because we couldn't remember what we saw.
It was very good. I don't know the difference between a good movie and a bad one, but I know what I like, and I like this one.
Well, great. I mean, you know what? That's the definition of a good movie.
Yeah.
Whatever rocks your boat, if you feel moved, then you were really moved. There's no wrong way. Even if you didn't get the plot quite right, it worked for you.
We never did find out what the arbitration amount was, did we?
In the
on the folded pieces of paper. I don't remember.
Well, I think it was 70. No, there's a lot.
75 million.
Yeah. 75 million was the second offer.
Which and originally when they were talking about, I said before it was going to trial and the guy suggested 100 million, everybody said, oh, that's outrageous. How can you ask for that? But then, once it got to 75 million in the arbitration, they said no.
So it's all about the money.
No, I think he really was more concerned with bankrupting the other guy.
Well, maybe you're just not rich enough, Joe, but a lot of times the money becomes a life force for people, as you've seen it on our small level that we live with. And
even in Mississippi, huh?
Even in Mississippi, right. And I think one of the points of the movie is that ultimately they were fighting to win, and it almost didn't matter what the money was, but they wanted to wreck the corporation. They wanted to do damage.
Yeah,
sure.
And the movie was about how these two very different kinds of personalities bonded together and did it. So it's like, it's about their journey from being skeptical of each other, untrusting, to trusting, to having a falling out, to getting back together by force of circumstance. Remember, because Mike said, I got to leave this case or you'll lose it. So it's I mean, that was a great scene when they revealed that your grandfather was a Klan member.
They played, I mean, everybody played good parts in it.
Yeah.
They were good actors. Well done.
One thing that I thought was really interesting was when I was reading up on what really happened, it wasn't that his grandfather was a Klan member, but that he actually was a really big racist. So I thought that was interesting.
Okay, so let me ask you, because this is a film school question. Why did they make it removed from him to be the grandfather was a Klan member?
I don't know. Maybe it was just too strong,
Yes, right. They didn't want you to lose sympathy for him or empathy, even though we all despise Klan members. So it's a calculated manipulation of the audience to say, oh, they'll turn off to him, distract them from the main trial and from Jerry.
Don't they interject those things just to create conflict?
But it was there in the trial transcript. It probably came up in the trial before the jury, which is why it was so disastrous. And that's why he leaves, and why Jerry and Willie get back together. So
no, I meant creating conflict in the watcher, us who's watching the movie.
Oh, yeah, pushing us around a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back and forth, and there's lots of back and forth. Your feelings about these people change. Mike, the attorney in the beginning, appears to be Jerry's friend. He says, no, you settle. Here's an idea. Sell a few. You'll have enough money. You'll get your business back. Just take what you can and move on. And it's a reasonable voice, and they're 30-year friends, you know. And if he hadn't called the two black people he meets son, you might not have felt as bad about him. But you know, they're undermining it. So they set up one set of expectations, and they undermine that with doubt about who is this person. And this film does that very skillfully all the time. And look at the doubt it sets up with Willie Gary in our minds. Oh my God, this guy's a huckster. You know, he's manipulating the people in the church, and then he's manipulating the jury in the trial. And he may be successful, but he's a showman. He's a blowhard. You know, you wouldn't want to do anything with him because he's so full of ego and so overconfident about himself that there's no room for anybody else in that sphere. And how his wife has managed to stay with him all those years, even though they were childhood friends, is a mystery. Anne, you had your hand up a moment ago. Anne?
Yeah, I'm bordering on having one of those senior moments where I forget why my hand was up, but I think it had to do with something that Joe said earlier. I honestly didn't feel, after the paper thing and the actual discussion about the amount of money, that this had anything to do with money at that point. I thought it had to do with doing what was right to get at the big guy, the big corporation, to stop doing what they were doing to people who were unable to pay and were less deserving. I mean, that for me, that was the refrain that ran through.
Well, everything, right. It's like Lowen says, isn't that enough money for you? And he said, yeah, it's enough for me, but it's not enough for you. I want to bring you down. You know, so clearly he's become a warrior for justice. Kimberly, your hand's raised.
My mom and I watched this movie last year, I guess when it first came on, and watched it again today. And at the end, we were still jumping up and down and excited. But from our perspective, what was nice was that it wasn't the white savior story that we're used to. It was the black guy saving the white guy for a change.
Yeah.
And also it was the fact that he and his wife had a love story. It's another image that we don't see for a lot of black characters in movies, that they had been childhood sweethearts, and you know, she appeared there. She didn't have to worry about would another woman be in the hotel with him.
Yeah.
Just that they had that closeness.
Right. That was you know what, even though we don't really know her that well, because she's kind of one note all the way, but what a delicious one note. You know, it's you believed her.
Yeah.
So she carried that part of the marriage contract, you know, and you could believe he would love her. Now, we don't know it, but in the church, the camera kept cutting to her in the very first scene, adoringly looking up at him. Okay.
And I know a lot of you said you didn't know Jamie Lee Fox could act. No, it's Jamie Fox.
Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis.
But if you want to see him in something where he's spectacular, I think he was nominated for an Oscar for it, was Ray, the story of Ray Charles.
Right. He was Ray Charles.
It was brilliant.
Yeah, terrific.
Who played Mame, was that her name?
Mame, yeah.
She was, the first time I saw her, I think she was 6 or 7 years old. It's a movie called Eve's Bayou.
Yeah.
That's the very first line. I killed my father when I was 6 years old, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
interesting. Jamie Foxx was more commonly known as a comedian, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you know, and it just shows his enormous range. You know, and it's a real accomplishment when an actor loses themselves in a character. Of course, he knew he was playing a flamboyant guy who was capable of being mocked. You know, he was mockable, but he had the ego down that this guy charges through brick walls, and there's nothing going to stop him. Linda, you have something?
Yeah, just a comment about the female lead, Mame. I thought, you know, she was kind of portraying the success similar to what Jamie Lee Foxx was being successful, but she kind of went on the straight and narrow path. She went to Brown, she went to all the, you know, the top law firms, but yet at the end, when she confronts him, there is a softness about connecting with him, and this to say he did the right thing in trying to defeat her client. Yeah. So I think, you know, there is a duplicity there. You know, on one level, she and Jamie are very successful in their careers, but where they came from, where the cultural backgrounds, the upbringing, it must have been very hard for both of them to achieve. And I think there is some kind of playing back and forth about the society where you make it successful, but you give up a lot of your humbleness and your values, and you play dirty to win. But then a part of you remembers back to some of the softness and the connections with people where you came from. So I thought that again was another subtle touch to the movie.
Yeah, they do have a conversation about that in the middle of the movie where he says, basically says, I'm my own man, I'm self-made, and you go to work for the white guy, you know? And then she comes back with a very good retort. I didn't make a note about it, but she says, well, what would you have me do? You know, and she does anybody remember what she says in the I'm sorry I don't have it, because that was important. She justifies what she does.
It was something like, would you rather me be a prosecutor or
Oh, right, yeah, and have no effect on the world. Yeah, and the equivalent of an ambulance chaser. Yeah, right. So again,
I think she says something about we're each living our own American dream.
Our own version of the American dream, right? And that's interesting, and it's a great distinction to make. You know, it's not only, you know, becoming a lawyer and making a lot of money. It's also about being a self-made person, you know, and they don't have to be polar opposites. I mean, look at Johnny Cochran, you know. And she brings that up again at the end of the movie when they part. She said, Johnny would be proud, you know, she walks away from him. It's very funny, the ribbing that they take. And of course, the trial was going on when this trial, the OJ trial was going on at this time. And
yeah, since we're talking about the lawyers, I kind of was I fell in love with Hal, and then he was sort of like a non-entity at the end, even though he was the one who uncovered everything. And I thought, well, wait a minute, where is the reward, or where is the acknowledgement among these two men for what his contribution was? It just kind of fell off, and I found that to be a weak spot for me.
I don't know, maybe, you know, that's worth
Well, I
researching.
just wondered if anybody else found that wanting.
I didn't. I didn't even think about it, but you're so right. He kind of falls away after the reveal, you know, of the evidence against Lowen and the NBC, not the network. But I mean, what
He was
lost
a crucial part of their case.
Yeah. I will say this, he gave a terrific performance, and you're going to see a lot of him. This is a breakout role for him, if enough studio executives see it. The guy's really good and understated, but you always know what he's feeling, you know, and responds to stresses. He knows how to deal with people. Certainly the character did. I liked him a lot, you know, and he was a refreshing presence there on the law team and in the film. So let's go back to the close of the film. After Mike quits, you know, and Tommy Lee Jones. We got a lot of Jerrys and Jamies to refer back to. He says, I thought justice was blind, right? But it certainly wasn't blind in my case. When he thought he was going to lose, right before the NBC news comes out. And these are themes in it, you know, granted, it's like an easy thing. You know, justice was not blind, you won, you know, but it's like, this is a guy who's feeling how he can't get satisfaction in this world. He was wronged, and he will forever be wronged, and Lowen will continue to rake in millions of dollars exploiting poor people. And he made that line come through without being histrionic. And then after that, Hal finds the documents. And I thought the Florida scenes were particularly moving. Jerry feels like he's got to settle and drop the trial. And he goes to Florida, and that's when the wife, Dahlia or Delilah, or it's a D name, says, "Oh, you're like family. I'm going to drive you to where he is, to his mother's house, where he goes every Saturday." There's really important stuff in this, and it kind of goes by, but there's an intimacy in those scenes with his mother and at her homestead. And then Hal returns with the news, and but let's pick that apart. So they're joking about how many children do you have, and how many children do you have, and Willie's mother and Jerry, find common ground. 24 children between them, and then they go for the walk with the train in the background. Lovely shot. And Willie knows basically Jerry came to say, we're going to drop the case. And he pleads with them, don't do it, don't do it. You don't know how much, I feel in my heart we can win this. And, they know each other's minds in that moment. And then Hal calls and said, don't let him drop the case. I've got news. And then Hal goes down there magically and finds them. And the next scene is they're in somebody's living room, and all the people who were part of a black church whom the Lowen company screwed. Well, yeah, they did what they said they do, but it didn't really work out for anybody. And that doesn't pay off until the courtroom scene where they call all these other witnesses. And then they go out, the guy with the gray white goatee, and they go out to a field. This was a very touching scene, and I'm so glad they put it in. He says, you don't, what do you see out here? Nothing. Well, this is a slave cemetery at one point. And he goes on, it might be a little bit overwritten, but it sure worked for me, where he says, it's one history piled upon another. And they don't stop there. They said, and it gets deeper and deeper. The pylons get deeper and deeper to the point where that other history will never emerge. Wow. I mean, that's something most people never think about, is where were all those slaves buried? And that affects, there's a reaction shot of Hal, realizing for the first time, Hal, who was educated and a lawyer and full of promise, and he certainly spoke the King's English, so maybe he came from a home where they spoke that kind of English. I don't know, I can't project, but he's realizing his roots too. This is his history lesson. He'd never heard it said quite that way before. So I think the filmmakers were really honest about that, to include that scene and include him. And it reminded me of the Holocaust. We've seen films where the Jewish person goes back to Poland and looks at the cemetery or the gravestones that are desecrated. It's the same kind of scene. So it resonated for me that way. In the hundreds of Holocaust films, good and bad, that I've seen, when handled right, those can be very effective. And this was that kind of scene. They put one, not history, they put one legacy on top of another to the point where you can't tell the first one anymore. And they erected Confederate monuments on these fields too. Not there anymore. So that was a lovely scene, and it really had a place there. So talk about race in the movie. Yes, it's a very important part of it. It certainly gives both Jamie Foxx and Hal, the history lesson they need to go on with passion. And then we see the final scene in court. And you notice they have Lowen walking into court from outside the courtroom, up this hallway and into court. And it's like, he's striding in there, and the music is appropriate. And he gets on the stand, and he's asked about the boat. I don't know how much it costs, and he probably doesn't know how much it costs, because he has so much money, it's a drop in the bucket, and it didn't matter to him, just like his private plane. Although he does wisely say, well, you have a private plane, and it's bigger than mine. It's like, this is, excuse me, people, it's what's known as dick swinging. And it's macho personalities in competition with each other. And, it was so natural there. It fit in. This is who these people are. And That's about it. We see we see the victims of the Lowen recruiting them. They came to ask me to buy a burial plan before my son was dead. Right? As though you think it's going to be bad like the others, and that's worse because it's like an undead child yet who was going to die. All the heinous deceptions and the emotional manipulation that Lowen Company did to this Black community is done in a montage. Just cut, 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 cut. One statement after another, different people. And it kind of, excuse me, drives the nail into the coffin for Lowen. And then there's the big, we'd had seen that big hammer about the money. They made 2 billion or 1.2 billion, and they paid $200,000 to the conference. And then the conference proceeded to exploit all the Black churches and turn the pastors into salesmen. And everybody got a piece of it. So in a way, it's how unbridled capitalism, destroys a lot of things. And capitalism needs regulation, because if people are allowed to participate in the free market without regulation, they hurt each other. Kimberly?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm from St. Louis, and about 25 years ago, something very similar was happening. A lot of the Black-owned funeral homes that they each had their own built-in audience. My family used Ellis, another family used Randall. And as those owners were as they were aging and dying, and their kids were taking over, there was some huge corporation that was coming through and buying them out. And suddenly, you went there because they had buried everybody else in your family. They knew who you were. They knew what you liked. And then suddenly you would go there, and there were no prices on anything. So you couldn't tell, they're like, just go look at the caskets. And if you had a $5,000 policy, which is the most a lot of people had, the funeral cost $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000. If you had a $20,000 policy, the funeral cost $20,000. So they were determined to spend up every dime you had, plus some.
It's like the funeral homes being allowed to sell insurance is kind of a conflict of interest.
Right.
It's fundamental to the law. I don't know if it still exists today. But see, that's another ghost in this story. Somebody earlier said it's about the conglomerates versus the little guy. Yeah, it very much is. And we saw how the cards were stacked against the small people they preyed upon. So it's a lesson. Trump can rail all he wants about the fascists and the communists and the socialists and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's just bunk. The point is, every form of government needs regulation and an internal affairs division to police it. And it's like, this is human nature. And in a way, just like it's human nature for Willie to turn down Jerry's job because not enough money. And at one point Jerry says, you're playing in this, you're doing this for yourself. I'm not. I'm doing it for my family. And they come together over family. All right, any more comments the people want to add? I don't know. Our next session is, what did I say, March 6th? It's also a Wednesday. Do you think that Wednesday's a bad night and that's why we have fewer people than normal? I don't know. Maybe, yeah. We'll see. But one announcement about the synagogue is that they want to do one film a month there on campus, at the Resnick campus. And we'll see how that goes, and what time is, and whether we do a weeknight or we do Sunday mornings, or it's very, we have a lot of experience doing it there for the first 3 years of the film discussion group. And a lot of people, 9:30 Sunday morning is too early for them. A lot of people can't get up and get dressed by that time. And the parents who drop their kids off at Sunday school want to go party, have 3 hours away from their kids for some relief. And so they don't stay for the movie, and the one time we did Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, it was a fundraiser. We had like 110 people, and it was for the Itzhak, the PBS profile series on Itzhak Perlman. And we had a violinist come and play for us whose grandfather paid for the Gray family chapel. It was Grandpa Gray. And he grew up there at the synagogue, and Cantor Jay came and spoke. And we turned it into an event. So people came. It was also on a Saturday night. And I kind of don't want to do it Saturday nights because my wife will get angry if I do. But we'll have to, we'll see. So there are changes ahead, maybe not. Maybe we'll just stick to Zoom on Thursdays, or well, let me ask the people here, if one of the 2 sessions a month are on campus at the Resnick campus, would you come? And if so, what time? No, all the heads will shake no, because
I
it's not
would.
easy.
I would vote for Sunday.
Sunday morning?
I would come. I would prefer Sunday morning. It's just easier for me, but I would come.
No, I prefer not to do it in an evening. It gets a little late, and I don't
Yeah.
know, just,
Well, you see, if we had it,
I'm too old for that.
yeah, the drawback is that if we have a live event, we first see the movie, and then we only have about 45 minutes or less to discuss it. And it's a lot, for some people to sit through, especially if the conversation is not exciting. And a lot of people, frankly, aren't as comfortable speaking out in public as they are speaking on Zoom in their own homes.
Well, maybe we should do the discussion another time. To see the movie for an hour and a half and then have a discussion after that.
Yeah.
Well, if
Yeah,
you
and
do
the
that in an
most I
evening,
ever had was 41 people on a Sunday morning. And usually it was down in the mid-20s.
I used to like it that way.
Yeah.
I used to like it that way when you did it. And it seemed pretty well attended to me.
Yeah.
The way I remember it a few years ago, you had quite a few people.
Yeah, it was 25. Occasionally we'd break 30, and the films play differently. So, Kimberly, you said you saw this some time ago. And did it play differently in a movie theater? And Joe, you said the same thing. Did it play differently when you saw it on?
No, I saw it on television before.
Oh, before. Okay.
We saw it in the movie theater.
And did it play differently for you?
No, not really.
I enjoyed it then too.
Okay.
It was it's really enjoyable to watching them do.
It is. I mean,
what they do.
This is one. At first, I was hesitant because it's a feel-good movie and what's to talk about. And I was a little hesitant to program it, but I realized the performances were so good and it was so well structured that we should do it, and it's like we're allowed to have some fun. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom movies. And there's still plenty of message in this kind of film for us to kick around.
Can I just put in a plug for another really good movie that people aren't hearing about at all? It's called Perfect Days.
Yeah, we're going to see it. We're going to see it.
Yeah, well, I saw it at the film festival. In fact, 4 of the ones that are up for foreign films, I saw at the Palm Springs Film Festival. Every one of them was just fabulous.
Perfect Days is an incredible movie for many reasons. And I hosted a discussion for the South Bay Film Society on Zoom because the director of that film society, they had about 500 people in 3 different theaters in the South Bay. He felt it would need a discussion. And so we held a discussion the next morning at 10:30 on Zoom. People loved it. They understood it. It was a far-ranging discussion. We got into Zen Buddhism because someone was a practitioner, but there's that in it. It would have gone there anyway. There's just so much there to talk about.
Yeah.
But by a character who was silent.
Jim?
Yeah, we're going to see that. Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah.
So, listen, since there's a private jet available as a result of this movie, could you send that jet for the out-of-towners and we'll come over?
I wish I could. Now, here's something, and this may sabotage us. We will have the capability of live streaming the discussion when we go to the Resnick campus, to the chapel. We may be able to live stream the discussion. So you could hear us talk and we can hear you talk. You can put your questions in chat. that may be a disincentive for some people to show up, the locals. So I don't know, but that'll be interesting to try. And we'll see. I think screening there and then having a Zoom the next day, is that an idea somebody tossed out? Would you be up for a 10:30 Zoom some morning? Say Thursday morning? Can people do that?
Thursday. I got exercise.
Okay, well, you see that
What
that's all
about
we do.
Sunday?
What?
Sunday morning seems like it might be a good,
For the Zoom?
Sunday morning, I'm saying, might be a good time to do a
As long as
movie.
it's not too
Wait,
early.
wait, wait. No, the point is, we're going to show the movie in the
And then
chapel,
do the discussion.
either there or on Zoom the next day. So how feel about that?
Is that going to be all of them or just occasional ones?
One a month. I think this is the format for us. You know, it's like a book group, and we get more done here. Our questions are a lot brighter than some of the live discussions I've had there. We all tend to see the same film. So, you know, it's a work in progress, but
We can try it. We can try it, see.
Yeah, we'll try different things and we'll see.
See how it works, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this was fun. I'm glad you all
Thank you. That
enjoyed
was
it.
great fun tonight.
Yeah.
Jim, thank you for talking a lot.
Jim,
Yeah.
Jim, do you have the movie for next week?
I don't, you know me. I just
You said the Ladies of Monticello, you said.
no, that's on the 20th of March
Oh,
in the chapel.
are we missing another one?
We will have one on the 6th, but I don't know what the title will be.
Oh, the 6th. Oh, you didn't give us one
It
yet.
takes me a week to recover from these sessions. So
Okay.
one of the problems this time of year is there's so many good films, but they are not out streaming yet because they're awards nominees, like Perfect Days. You know, it's like they hope that winning an award will stimulate the audience for the film, so they want to make it available.
Perfect Days
When
is
you
in
do
the
not
theater
show it-
because I saw it in the theater.
Recently,
What you're talking about is 3 weeks in a row.
no, it's the
Yes,
6th.
yes. Today is February 28th. How many days?
Oh, okay, right.
March 6th.
Well,
March 6th is one
yes,
week.
March 6th is next week. My wife corrected me from the other room. Do you want to do it? Let me see if I can find a film in that time.
Just next week.
Next
Yeah, it's just
next week, Wednesday night.
And
Again,
how many weeks after that to the next one?
2
weeks.
Also Wednesday night.
That's the March 20, right?
Yeah. You're holding your head like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's just
Is a lot?
Well, it's not a lot for coming to the discussion. It's a lot for my taking a night to watch a whole movie. It's all right. It's all right. I'll be there.
Well,
But I won't go to Resnick to see a movie.
you won't. Okay.
No, I don't know what their goal is except community building. And
Well, Susan Nanis wanted to celebrate the opening of the Great Chapel.
that's been celebrated.
Yeah, and she thinks it will stimulate engagement of congregants.
That's what I'm saying. It's a matter of making community. I believe in making community, but I think we're doing a good job with that on Zoom.
I think so too, but you know, she thinks we'll get other people. I don't know. But you see, the only promotion we get at the synagogue is in the bulletin, which very few people read. Okay, so you are all on my private email list. And I said, can't we just use the congregation-wide list? And they said, no.
Can't.
No. It may all the sisterhood, I guess they have their own records.
Sisterhood has its own list.
Its own list, yeah. So like I have our own list.
Same as you do.
Yeah. And you know, I have to bang out 80 names, you know, in the copy column. My internet doesn't allow me to use groups anymore.